Warning! This video contains spoilers to Resident Evil 1 and content not appropriate for children. Can I go now? Is there anyone in the recording booth? No? It's just me? Okay then. Hello, we're Bloobcast. My name's James.
I'm Ewan.
And I'm Rob. But the question is, why are we called the Bloobcast?
Yes!
Today, we are discussing one of my all-time favourite games, Resident Evil 1. I'm making it really clear, we're talking about 1 and not the entire series because we just discussed the entire X-Men series and I really don't want this to turn into another 2-hour discussion of every game ever.
Before we move I have to thank Ewan because he actually helped me with the editing of the last one and it made life so much easier. It saved my a bit, to be honest.
Of course, we will eventually do episodes on the other games because, I adore Resident Evil 2. It's one of my favourite games of all time, but James hasn't played it and we don't want to make this a marathon and will get his own dedicated episode.
As a sort of to preface this as well, I have not finished Resident Evil 1. I have played it, I really love it, I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to complete it one day, but I'm really bad at it, and also I kind of want to take the time to really finish it. But I've played enough to sort of know what's going on, and I've listened to a video that Ewan sent me of the best
full voice acting.
No! Don't go! Joseph!
I'm gonna kick this door down. That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. But Barry, didn't you say you're going back to the dining room to do some research? Why on earth are you here?
So Resident Evil, I first discovered... we're going to jump straight into how I discovered it. I first discovered it on the YouTube Machinima series Idiot Box. Which makes use of a ton of the lines from, the voice-acted lines from Resident Evil. So when I finally played Resident Evil for the first time, it was a joy to me to play through it and realize that all of those lines were all, so things like, what is it?
It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things.
Things like that where... Idiot Box was just full of ripped audio from the game, and so that was my discovery. I then to counterbalance James just starting the series, I should really stress I've played the GameCube version, the PS3 remake version, the original PlayStation 1 version, and the Director's Cut PlayStation 1 version.
You make it sound so easy.
I'm a really big fan of this game, of just this one game in the series. It's like I started playing Resident Evil 2 and I was like, this is pretty cool. But is it 1 though? And then I just went back to 1.
So I'm going to jump in, explain how I discovered Resident Evil, and it's a bit different to you. And so I actually didn't get into Resident Evil until about, I think it's nearly 2 years ago now. I'd already played Silent Hill, and that was my favourite horror game, and I loved Silent Hill. But what put me off Resident Evil was I heard about you had to save with a resource like ink ribbons, and it's funny that's what put me off because now there's an aspect of the game that I love, which we'll get into later. But what eventually got me into the series was around late 2018, 2019, early 2019. Normal Boots had a debate show on their channel called Madness, which was they got a panel of various YouTubers to talk about video games to debate topics. And for one season they were doing PS1 games, and Resident Evil 2 was one of the games on there. And Resident Evil 2 actually ended up winning. And the way they spoke about Resident Evil 2 made me realise this game sounds amazing. I have to get it. So I ended up going, I think, first to eBay, where I failed to acquire it through several auctions, and then went to Amazon and got a copy. I loved it. It was it instantly became one of my favourite games ever made, if not, maybe not my actual absolute favourite, but in terms of PS1 games, it's in my top 3, along with Spyro 3 and Oddworld, Abe's Exodus.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, Conan.
But yeah, then after playing the second one, I went to the first one, and I liked the atmosphere, but I found the mansion way too daunting and big to get around. So I found it way too overwhelming, and so I didn't end up playing through it because I had no idea what I was doing. So it wasn't until doing this episode that I went around and actually played through not just the first game in full, but the remake. Played the remake on the Switch. Or I actually played the remake first, then went back to the PS1 version to see what exactly was different, what they added in the remake, so I could discuss it fully. So I did 3 playthroughs, so 2 playthroughs of the remake. So I did a Chris and the Jill playthrough, and then I did 1 Jill playthrough of the original.
This is the thing we need to mention, is that there are multiple versions of Resident Evil 1, including not only the original PlayStation 1 game, but also a PlayStation 1 re-release called the Director's Cut. And then
there's 2 versions of that.
There was 2 versions of that, yeah. One of them called DualShock, which we'll talk about later because it's one of the greatest games ever made for all of the wrong reasons. And then a few years later, in 2002, I should mention 1996, 1997 for the first and the Director's Cut. But then the remake was 2002, so it was a good few years later when, we had a lot of horror games that had already come out, including Resident Evil 2 and 3 by this point.
And Silent Hill was come along as well. Yeah, the remake you mentioned has been ported to other systems. Like I mentioned, I played it on the Switch. And it's amazing being able to play the game portably as well.
Oh, wow.
And we should mention with the remake, they completely updated it from the PlayStation 1 graphics. It looks almost completely different, apart from just the general, layout of the levels and everything. But the actual graphics and everything were just completely overhauled. As much as I love the original voice acting, it was probably a good idea that they did update the voice acting as well. And they added in more content, which we'll get into. So yeah, the remake has a lot of stuff to discuss on its own. But first, James.
Hello.
What was your experience with Resident Evil?
Before I jump into that, also, I'm a big fan of Gmod Idiot Box, by the way, Ewan. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I also enjoyed Normal Boots as well. It's very amusing to me that you both actually heard about Resident Evil through kind of the internet. I want to say it's kind of like the gaming internet renaissance sort of period where a bunch of artists and stuff like that got together and started recording themselves playing video games and making weird stuff with those video games. But to be honest, you guys introduced me to it, and it happened this year, really. Although, actually, no, that's not true. So I did have an experience with Resident Evil 4 at university, and also my brother played it. But as to Resident Evil 1 itself, that was basically Ewan kind of messaged me saying it's the best game ever, and and I was like, okay. And eventually I got recently this year I got a PlayStation 2, which has been wonderful. I've been playing all the sorts of games like Spyro, the Legend of Spyro, and Rayman and all that stuff, and Resident Evil as well. I got that on eBay and I've been playing that and really dying horribly in it.
Yeah, we'll have some fun stories about our playthroughs because there's some stuff I kind of want to brag about when I play through the game. Before
I finish mine, actually, because mine's going to be quite short. You guys saw it in real time, but I was messaging you guys as I was playing the game. It was like streaming of I think you actually described it as streaming of consciousness or something like that.
It was, yeah.
Literally,
it was so painful for me because I was seeing you struggle, and I was like, "I know what you should do. Don't do this."
I was
trying to say, and you was like, "Don't tell him. Don't tell him." I was like, so hard.
It was like, Rob, no, he must learn.
Oh my god! The whole time I was just like, "Oh, I've got this now. Stay." All in caps.
To be honest, my favourite bit was the shotgun. I was like, wait till you find the shotgun, and then he's like, oh, he's missed the best bit of the game.
No, here's the thing. Wait, no, here's the thing. I got the... Alright, there's apparently there's a strap shotgun. You need to put a broken shotgun on the wall before you pick up the new shotgun. I went in... And I had the broken... No, I didn't have the broken shotgun. It was in my box. So I picked up the shotgun, and all of a sudden the ceiling started like crushing, like falling upon me. And I was messaging the group like, "There's a ceiling that's crushing me. What's going on?" And I just ran back into the door where I came from and put the shotgun back and ran to the box. And it took me about 10 minutes basically. And I got this broken shotgun and put it back, and then Rob was just like, "Oh, that's
Okay.
okay."
We need to explain the context. So basically, when you play as Jill and we should also mention that you play through the game twice. First as either or you can play as Jill or Chris, and they are both. We haven't even discussed what the plot is of this game.
To be honest, actually, now that I said it, we should probably put a spoiler warning right at the beginning of this podcast. Actually,
Okay. Oh, yeah, spoiler alert. We discussed the entire plot of the game, and at the same time, the plot of the game does not matter at all, because the game is not about the plot. Basically, the plot is an evil corporation is making zombies in a mansion.
and also mechanics, surprises, snakes.
To explain the context of the shotgun, there is a part in the game where to acquire the shotgun, you need to get a broken shotgun and replace the actual functional shotgun with it, because otherwise the ceiling will collapse on you.
Yes.
When you play as the character of Chris Redfield, this is mandatory, you have to do this. But if you're playing as Jill Valentine, who's the best character to play as,
Yes.
you don't have to do this, because if you don't replace the shotgun with a broken shotgun, you get rescued at the last minute by the best character in the game, Barry Burton, who comes along, saves Jill, and utters the greatest line in video game history: "That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich."
See, I completely missed that.
There is a point of contention, though. We don't know if he said Jill or Jibble sandwich, but
You are not the only one, because I remember. Remember when Ewan told me that he thought it might be Jibble. I remember seeing Kadikarus did a video on the first Resident Evil when he said, "Oh, when I was younger, I thought that was Jibble sandwich." I was like, Ewan said the exact same thing as Kadikarus said.
Because he says Jibble sandwich. I don't care that it's like scripted as Jill sandwich. He says Jibble. I mean, the original line is dumb to say you were almost a Jill sandwich. But then, like, to say Jibble sandwich is just itself really dumb.
That particular character, Barry, has, like, some of the most infamous and quotable lines in the entire game.
But just take a look at this. It's forest. Oh my god.
Yeah, okay, so the context for that. So, Resident Evil is a Japanese game. It was made by Capcom. And when they did the voice acting for it, they got a set of actors who basically did like localized work in Japan. So like English voice actors and English actors who would do adverts and things, which they would then like sell to American markets. So, you know, you need an American for your American advert, was that kind of thing. So they got these people and they had them voice act in-house in Japan, presumably without an English voice actor coach. You had a bunch of English voice actors being told to emote by Japanese people who didn't know the English language that well, to the point that they didn't really understand how English speakers emote in different ways, so that they recorded all of these different takes of the lines, and then the Japanese just took whatever sounded the most emotional to them.
It's awful!
I think the thing that sets the tone for the game perfectly is, at least in the original, you get this wonderfully B-movie-ish live-action cutscene with these people outside in the... It's so wonderfully... my favourite bit is the bit where the helicopter flies away and Chris just stands there like, "No! Don't go! No! Don't go!"
Yeah, no, it sets the tone perfectly, because this is a B-movie game. Like, it has so many references to B-movie stuff. And at the same time, it's pure schlock. You run around blowing up zombies' heads in a haunted mansion, basically.
But at the same time, it manages to have a really, really spooky atmosphere. Like, that's my main selling point of the game, is the atmosphere. It has its jump scares, but the thing that makes this game scariest is like the atmosphere, because you're in this big, anomalous mansion with like really spooky music. I'm just playing the DualShock version.
I know it's like not clever enough to do it, but you know when you open the doors and stuff like that, I was always worried that there's going to be a zombie on the other side or some horrible thing. Do you know what I mean? That just jumps out at you.
Yeah. That's the thing, like
Wait, what?
the limitations of the
crumpets
from through the game being on the PS1, like the door transitions, they're a loading screen, they're to hide the loading, but it works really well. Like all the limitations help to sell the horror and add to the atmosphere.
Oh, it's really creepy when you walk, you walk through a door, you get this kind of, not slow, but this fairly atmospheric little animation of a door opening, and you can hear the door opening, and then the next thing you do is you have a zombie literally walking towards you as you walk in. It throws you off because you can't see what you're walking into.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you can't kill every zombie in the game. You do not have enough resources to do that because they take lots of bullets to take down, and ammo is really hard to come by. As well as this, like healing items aren't as easy to find, and if a zombie bites you like a couple of times, you're dead. So this adds like some strategy to games. Like, do you kill the zombie or do you avoid them, or do you fire like multiple pistol shots into the zombie, or do you wait for them to get close enough to shoot their head off with a shotgun?
That's the thing. Like, I mean, I made the mistake of shooting everything in sight until I ran into the leeches and died horribly. I'm actually planning to restart my playthrough, and like, there are bits where you just literally need to run past the zombie, or like literally wait for them to walk in a certain area. For instance, as you say, it's like a strategy. You kind of wait for them to walk in an area that's out of the way, and then run past them and stuff like that.
And even saving the game is part of your strategy because you can only save. You have like increments, and those are a limited resource.
Yeah.
At first, this sort of put me off playing the game, but now I love it because it's kind of like saving the game becomes part of your strategy. You could reach a save point, but you've used up all your ammo, you're nearly dead, and you have no healing items. It's like, yeah, do you really want to save your game? Is it worth wasting an ink ribbon on that?
The game is a lot more fair than I think people realize going in head on, because it's very easy to just like fire all of your bullets into like the first zombies you meet, and then you're immediately out of health items, and then you run into a corridor where some dogs jump through and kill you. Like, the game can be brutal, but then after the aforementioned dogs, so there's a corridor you run through and some dogs jump through the window. But then once you get to the end of that corridor, there's a health item in the next room. And there's no zombies in that room either. So it's actually a little reprieve. But the game isn't as cruel as people realize. It does give you a chance to breathe between the big, like, horrible moments.
And also, as you're playing the game, you slowly piece together like how the mansion's laid out. But like I said, when I first played it, I had no idea where I was going. I didn't know which doors led to what. But once you learn it, you feel like so badass, like knowing, okay, and you can like plan like how the mansion's laid out into your strategy of where to go next. So, okay, I'm not going through this door because there's going to be those dogs that are going to jump at me and stuff like that. And then halfway through the game, it throws a curveball. At one point, you have to go out of the mansion and go through like the guardhouse and stuff.
Yeah.
Then you come back thinking, okay, I've got this key. I can go through those last doors. I'm not being out. I'm not going to have any problems. Then suddenly you get back to the mansion, and then the hunters come in, and they're like so much tougher than the zombies, and like they can kill you like pretty much instantly, and it just adds like this whole layer of challenge to the game.
For me personally, it's kind of like a trial and error sort of game, and that's why the ink ribbons are quite a significant part of the game. You need to save at a place you know is comfortable and you've got the resources you need before you basically lose any and die prematurely, basically.
See, what I do with the ink ribbons is I use multiple save files, so I know if I've absolutely myself, I can go back to an earlier save.
Yeah. But like for me, like there are points like when I first played the game, as soon as I ran through the hallway with like all the kind of things that are being exhibited, and a dog kind of smashed through a window, I just panicked, went dog, and just died horribly. But now I know that you can run past that dog, and it's basically that try and error sort of experience you go through, and I like that. It's not a game that's sort of determined by its actual length. It's the length of the player gives it. It's the time that you take to learn and sort of carry out the obstacles, as it were, and that's quite nice. I think it's a bit like a LucasArts adventure game in a.
That's what I thought. When I was playing through it, I played through remake before going back to the original.
Yeah.
But when I was playing remake, I thought the way that this game's laid out is like a point-and-click adventure game, because you have to like run around this big space, and you've got to find certain like items to know how to best solve the puzzles. And it's like, no, you pick up an item, it's like you don't know where to use it.
The big cultural reference point for Resident Evil when it was being made was actually, I was going to say it was Alone in the Dark, but it wasn't just Alone in the Dark. There was actually...
It was Sweet Home as well.
Sweet Home, which was another game that Capcom had made.
That was a movie licensed game as well, remember?
Oh, wow. But yeah, so the idea in that was that you ran around a mansion, you know, picking up items and solving puzzles and that sort of thing. But Alone in the Dark, like, when you play that, it's so obviously a reference. Because, yeah, it is trial and error, the game. You run into a room... and then a zombie comes up behind you through the door and kills you. And that's Alone in the Dark. And you just go, okay, I got to restart. I got to figure out what I did wrong. And it's to the point that at the end of Alone in the Dark, you realize that there's an underground cave system that leads to an evil thingamabob. In Alone in the Dark, it's like a cult, like mystical, magical thing. But of course, in Resident Evil, here's the big spoiler twist. There's a giant laboratory under the mansion.
And your buddy Wesker is working for the evil corporation making zombies.
Oh my god, the shifty guy in sunglasses turned out to be evil. Who would have thought? Yeah, Wesker is sus from the get-go. But the game is adorable for the way that it plays it completely straight and doesn't really reference the fact that he looks incredibly evil the whole time.
Just the whole way the characters, like, I have to say it, I mean, it's going to sound horrible, but all the characters sound like they got, like, the IQ of 5, just, like, in general. Like,
What is it?
What is this all about? I can't figure it out at all.
like, at one point, a zombie just shows up, and then, like, they kill it, and they go, there's something very weird going on. It's like, no shit, a zombie's just appeared in front of you.
It gets even worse towards the end when Wesker is explaining his master plan, and it's just the most garbled dialogue you've ever heard in your life.
How come both Umbrella and you can intimidate him by taking his family as hostages?
Umbrella? Well, I intimidated him, but it had nothing to do with Umbrella.
It's just so wonderfully and hilariously bad. And it was Japanese, Japanese writers and translating into English that obviously whoever they got to do it didn't do the best job ever, on top of English voice actors that they picked out from people who just lived in Japan, who were also not given the best direction ever, and you just get the most wonderful voice acting plus writing in any video game ever that has to this day not been topped, I don't think.
Come with me. I'm sorry for my lack of manners, but I'm not used to escorting men.
Did you guys know this game was originally, when they were originally planning it, it was going to be, I think at one point it's going to be on the Super Nintendo, and another point it's going to be a first-person game.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, I did know that. Yeah. Well, they, I think it was Alone in the Dark was the thing that inspired them to go third person, because they realized that...
With the fixed cameras and everything.
Yeah, so the fixed camera is one of my favorite details of the game, because again, it feels very B-movie. One of my favorite movies of all time, Night of the Living Dead, which again also has very fixed cameras all over like the house which all the characters are in.
And all the backgrounds as well are pre-rendered.
Yeah, so you're a little animated character running around these pre-rendered fixed camera things, and it's just wonderful because they can place zombies in places that you can't see until you enter a certain point, and then the camera will change, and then suddenly there's like 2 zombies coming towards you.
Yeah, thing is, you can also hear them as well, like hear the zombies going, you can hear them groaning, you can hear the dogs running around.
Yeah,
but well, you can. Ones you can't hear are the f***ers. Like at one point,
they do have their own distinctive footsteps, which
but there's one point where I ended up absolutely just messing myself. I ended up in a situation where I had no healing. I just thought, there's this room I've not been in yet, which has herbs. I'm going to go back here. I know there's no zombies in this corridor. I was running down the corridor. The next thing I know, the camera changes. Hunter jumps out at me, kills me.
Amazing. Yeah, no, well, I think actually in the remake, I think you're right. I think the hunters do not make any noise. So actually, no, in the original, they have a little creepy footsteps that they do. But yeah, no, in the remake, Nope, they just jump at you immediately.
Yeah, that's the thing with, also like halfway through. When the hunters show up, they show up in corridors that were previously empty as well. So it's like,
oh yeah, no, I had a horrible experience. I played the director's cut recently, and I played it on advanced mode, so hard mode basically. Yeah, I ran into a corridor which usually, in the remake, I don't think it has any hunters in it at all. But in the director's cut, it had 3 hunters in it. So it was a real shock.
another thing that alters difficulty is the character you play as. Like Jill, she takes less hits before dying, but she has like 8 inventory slots and the lockpick, which means she can access more of the mansion.
Here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
She also gets the grenade launcher, and she can get the shotgun without having to replace it with the broken shotgun. Chris only has 6 inventory slots and needs a key to unlock the doors that Jill can access with the lockpick.
I started the game, my first playthrough was with Chris, and oh my god, I remember just thinking, I think I said to you guys, like, there's no way I'm going to finish this, like, in the allotted time. I still didn't finish in a lot of time regardless, but still, when I played Jill, it was like a different game entirely. I couldn't believe it. The first zombie you come across gets killed for you. You have a lockpick, as you say, to unlock most of the doors. You get a grenade launcher just given to you. You get a pistol that's given to you. You save ammo, and I noticed there's a bit I kept dying on with Chris, which is near the staircase, where there's 3 zombies.
I know. That's why I saved room as well.
It's my favourite room.
Yeah, but like, there's only 2 zombies when you play the Jill playthrough. It's like, what?
Yeah, no, it's when I played because I'd originally played the remake first, so when I also played the original for the first time, I played it after James had been going on about how hard Chris's playthrough was, and yeah, like when I played it, I was like, oh my god, there's like a ton of zombies, like way more than there is in even the remake.
I think it was in your words. You said it's less, it's more forgiving or something like that, and I was like, right, let me give it another go, and you was like, oh my god, he was right. Crazily.
And that's the thing. Can we? I just want to discuss something that they changed with the zombies for remake.
Yeah.
In the original game, you kill a zombie, it stays dead. In the remake, you kill a zombie, and it will stay there, unless you either blew its head off with the shotgun, or you set its corpse alight using some kerosene, which is another resource you've got to keep track of.
Yeah.
If you don't do either of those things, at any point, the zombie can come back as a Crimson Head, which is a faster, more deadly zombie that can kill you more easily.
Yeah. This is what I love, is that in remake they really make it more like an actual zombie, where it's like you've got to shoot it in the head. It also feels very, again, Night of the Living Dead, because there's a bit in that where Ben, the main character, sets a zombie's corpse on fire. So it's like, it feels more Night of the Living Dead, which is just great.
Here's a lore thing about the Crimson Heads. I don't remember where I read this, but apparently the Crimson Heads, they eventually evolve into the Lickers, which are enemies in Resident Evil 2.
Okay. I always wondered where the Lickers came from, because I always thought they were pretty weird, and the original game has no explanation for them, so it's like, they're just these weird things with really long tongues that just turn up in Resident Evil 2, and I'm like, they weren't in the lab, where did these ones come from?
I'm not going to spoil anything, but their introduction 2 is so cool. So you run into the police station and then you see one crawling by a window. Then you drive down the corridor and there's like blood dripping from the scene. There's a headless corpse. And then eventually you get a cutscene that reveals the Lickers hanging on the ceiling with its long tongue going...
Yeah, no, that's what I love, is that a lot of the villains throughout the series, but especially in Resident Evil 1, a lot of the monsters get their own little cutscene a little cutscene introducing them, which I really enjoyed. Like the hunter has a brilliant one where it chases you through the garden until it comes up to the room that you're in, which is just a really cool way to like freak you out when you realize, oh god, it's like right behind me.
Yeah, and also the very first zombie reveal.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so creepy. So creepy.
Yeah, it turns its head around. It's great.
And then there's that big like crackling sound. You see the blood splatter beside him. It's like, oh my god.
And in the uncut version of the game, like you see the cutscene extended where the guy he's eating head just rolls on the floor.
Oh god.
it's so great.
Wasn't it like when you go up to the corpse, it says like it's a shadow of his former self or something like
It
that?
does. It's so weird.
Well, that's another thing. Like all the weird sort of the writing in it. When you come across like the journals and stuff like that, it is, to be fair, really horrifying. Some of the things that are written down. Like there was that one person that's working for the Umbrella Corporation or something like that. They're a scientist that suddenly gets like a really bad itch. It starts up and then suddenly the security around say he can't leave the premises. And then suddenly, like, the dialogue gets very weird. Like, eventually it devolves into him saying, like, the security guard made me angry, very itchy, tasty or something like that. Yeah.
He said, like, I killed him and ate him at that point. Yeah. Like,
And that's the thing, that notebook you find in a room with the zombie, so basically you end up having to kill that zombie. I think he springs out of the cupboard and attacks you.
It's one of the creepiest things. So basically, again, we should really explain the context of this game. So there's you are part of a SWAT team. You are either Jill or Chris, called the Stars. And you come into this mansion after you were investigating a Bravo team, which was another SWAT team had gone out to investigate. They've disappeared. So you've gone out to look for them in the forest. And then you get attacked by the dogs, which we've mentioned. And then you run into the mansion, which is just apparently just built in the middle of this forest, where you then discover that all of the scientists are dead and have been turned into zombies, and that there's even scientists inside this mansion. Why are there scientists here? At which point you then learn that the entire mansion was a front for a secret laboratory built by the Umbrella Corporation, which is experimenting in bioweaponry. It's so wonderfully silly, but at the same time, it's genuinely creepy. Well, it's creepy because with the scientists, you get all of these little notes and diaries and things where they talk about how they've now become infected. Yeah,
that's the
and
thing.
How they're dying, basically.
You piece together the story through all the notes you find. So it's not, a lot of it's not explicitly told to you. You have to read the notes to piece together the story.
Yeah, exactly. And you get, and the really horrible stuff is when you get to like the laboratory at the end, where like you start getting like faxes and communications from the Umbrella Corporation, and it'll be things like, yes, we are aware that like half of the science team are now dead. Quarantine everything. Make sure no one else can leave. It's horrible.
One of the cool things I found in Resident Evil 1 is that you get this email from a character, an email. Yeah, John, and his part of the computer is Ada. Then in Resident Evil 2, you come across a character called Ada who's looking for her boyfriend, John.
Yes! It's so great. They actually build that up as its own thing in the second game. That's wonderful. With my recent playthrough of the director's cut and the remake, I think they made them knowing that the people who played them had played the previous games or had played the original game, Resident Evil 1 for the PlayStation 1, because there are little touches where like there's a window that you look through in the original game where you look out and you go, oh, look, there's a helipad over there. We can use that to escape. When you get to that same window in the director's cut, you go up to the window and a bunch of crows crash through and attack you.
Oh, God, the crows. Oh, my God.
Yeah, James's favourite enemies were the crows.
I literally shot every single one of them at one point when I really didn't need to. It was just like, it was a personal agenda at that point. I was just like, right, you're all going down.
It looks like he was killed by a crow or something.
Also, that puzzle. The paint puzzle.
Oh, yeah, the painting puzzle, yeah.
Oh, my God. Why? Why is that a thing? It's just so weird and doesn't make any sense.
Oh, is that the painting puzzle? Oh, yeah, I remember playing the original, and I remember feeling so happy with myself, working that out for myself.
Yeah.
Is that the one where you've got to, look at all the paintings, you've got to choose them, as a baby, then go up to the old man?
Yeah, you've got to pick them in the right order.
I'm going to be up front, and you're going to not like me for this, but I used the tutorial for that one bit because I just literally couldn't. Oh, okay. That makes it feel slightly better.
But honestly, Resident Evil throws you into so many weird things, and they don't really explain what you're supposed to do in a lot of them, and it is just
Just typical.
Then you get attacked by crows, and you're like, "No, I'm done."
Yeah, typical LucasArts adventure game that is.
Yeah. Let's talk about James's favourite part of the game, which is giant snake.
Oh yes, we've got Yawn the Snake.
So the snake, I think, is a really cool detail because it's kind of the first implication that we're not just dealing with zombies here. There's something else going on. There's a giant snake in the attic. And when I say giant, I mean it can follow you whole.
Literally, I could not believe it when I saw it. I was just like, literally like, oh, I finally got through this hard pit, and then all of a sudden this snake appeared. I was like, snake! For God's sake! Why is there a snake?
Here's one of the points where I get to brag. In the remake, admittedly, I was doing it, I think, not the hardest difficulty, but the difficulty just below that. I killed the snake with nothing but a handgun.
What? Nice. How? It kept, like, the weird, like, when I was playing the PS1, his whole body kept, like, glitching my character into a pillar or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing...
You've got to keep running away from it.
I was playing remake rather than original for that one, but... basically, it's the first encounter with the snake. Yeah. You have two encounters, but basically, I ended up doing it with the shotgun because Chris didn't have the rocket launcher, and then I run into a Crimson Head in like a graveyard and died instantly because I tried to kill Crimson Head with the handgun. It's as much use as a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Yeah. So I was like, let's go back to before the snake and see if we can do it with the handgun. And I did. I said this to you in the chat. I was like, when we do this podcast, I am bragging about how I killed a snake with a goddamn handgun.
Was the remake made onto PC out of interest?
Yeah, it has been ported to the PC, yeah.
It was originally a GameCube exclusive because Capcom had an exclusivity deal with Nintendo at the time.
Yeah.
Now they ported
those the games that they made that were supposed to be exclusive ended up being ported to other consoles, like Resident Evil 4. That was really supposed to only be for the GameCube, and then within a year is on the PS2 as well.
I can't help but think about the controls. I think the actual aiming system might be better done with a mouse potentially.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I love the tank control. Like the tank controls make the game scarier because you're not able to move around as freely, so that adds to the tension.
Should explain. They're basically this thing where you can run around, but the only way to shoot is to stand still and fire, and you have to slowly turn around like a real life tank. Just to explain what tank controls are.
Dino Crisis has similar controls, but with Dino Crisis you can ready your gun and shoot while moving around.
Whoa! Now that's innovation right there.
No,
is that you can run and
how much easier that is because of course dinosaurs are much faster than zombies. There's one puzzle which I found in the remake, which I found to be a bit of a nightmare the first time I played, at least because of the controls and the camera angles. So for this puzzle, you go into a room, you have to press a button, then run round and push a statue into a certain part of the room.
I love that.
Sounds easy enough, but I was so disorientated by the cameras and the controls of not running the right direction I want to go. That it took me so many times to do it on my first, and I was so frustrated. It's this puzzle's awful. I hate this puzzle.
It's hilarious because when you play it a second time round, you literally manage to do it just in one go.
Yeah, that's exactly when I did it as Chris did it the first time.
It's hilarious. You'll really struggle first time round with Jill, where you'll be doing all these puzzles, going, I have no idea how to do this. Oh god damn it, I've screwed it up, so now I have to reset it. And then when you're just replaying it as Chris, you just you live up to Chris Redfield's name of running around and just owning every single moment. It's great.
Speaking of the two character thing, this is something that I think the second one did a bit better. Is in the first
developed on that.
Yeah, first game, you choose the character to start, and you get an alternative version of events with the two characters, and their paths never cross till the end of the game when you rescue the other characters being held captive by Wesker.
Yeah.
But then in Resident Evil 2, they do something even cooler. You get 2 discs, 1 disc for each character. You finish the game as one character. So then you go put the second disc in and load your game, You see the whole game from the other character's perspective, and certain items you picked up as the first character are unavailable as the second character.
Oh.
No, it is cool. They built upon Alone in the Dark. You play as either basically the woman character or the man character in that one. You know, you can see the progression from Alone in the Dark to Resident Evil 1 to Resident Evil 2. It's very cool to see how they started playing with the character interaction, I guess, where, like, you know, in Resident Evil 1, yeah, it's just a simple case of, like, you basically play through all of the same scenarios but as the different character, and there's just a couple differences. My favorite being the fact that Chris can't play the piano, but Jill can.
So Chris has to get Rebecca Chambers to play the piano for him.
Yeah, so Rebecca is a police girl from Bravo team who's managed to survive in the mansion for a while. And yeah, you come across this piano, which opens a door if you play the Moonlight Sonata by Mozart. And Jill just, like, gets it and just immediately plays it because she can play the piano. And then when Chris tries to do it, it's like, oh.
That sounded like Moonlight Sonata.
So you have to let Rebecca start playing the piano for a bit, you go off and do something else, and then come back and she's finally, like, figured out how to, like, play it properly.
Oh, yeah.
To open the door. It's great.
And Rebecca as well, she ended up having her own game, which was Resident Evil 0.
Yeah, no, it expands on what happened to her, which is just hilarious because she's like goes through a horrible nightmare in Resident Evil 0, and then the idea is that she then goes to the mansion in Resident Evil 1, and it's like, oh great, she doesn't catch a break. Like, at least everyone else gets, like, they get to finish Resident Evil 1, they get to the chopper, and then they all fly away happily ever after until a few months later when everything goes to hell in Resident Evil 2.
And then in Resident Evil 3, which goes on during Resident Evil 2, Jill's got this big thing chasing after her.
Yeah, exactly. But at least she has a few months to chill out and, you know, get her tube top and her, like, short skirt that she wears in Resident Evil 3.
It's like, kind of like annual leave, isn't it? It's like, you take your annual leave before you take on the next nightmare.
I think Chris showed up in Code Veronica. Then by Resident Evil 5, he's like punching boulders.
So Chris Redfield, in the first game, he runs away from boulders. By the fifth game, he's punching boulders. And by now, Resident Evil 8, he apparently has become the boulder. Good old Chris. We all love Chris. He's the ultimate action man.
He's no Leon Kennedy, though.
Leon Kennedy is a little twink, so I have no time for him.
He's a tatty twink, that's the thing.
He appears in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, he's the main character.
Yeah.
He first appeared in 2, and then in 4 he's like sassing the bad guys and everything.
No thanks, bro.
Well, that game embraced the kind of campiness that we saw in the original game that became less of a thing in Resident Evil 2 and 3, but then, yeah, Resident Evil 4 embraces the camp in a wonderful way.
We definitely need to do an episode on
that. Resident Evil 2 still kind of had that, because there's a thing when you first meet, I think, was his name Marvin, in the police station, and he's like, there's been an incident involving zombies.
About 2 months ago, there was this incident involving zombies in a mansion. Oh, man.
We should talk about the live action opening at the beginning. That shocked me a little bit. Because, like, when I sort of boot it up, I kind of looked very closely at the, like, I'm assuming it's Chris that's being chased. He's like, right at the beginning, basically.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking close, it's like, is that real live action? Because I thought, no, the CGI wasn't that good back then, do you know what I mean? I was just like, hang on,
it's
this
really
is...
cool.
And then I realised the whole opening sequence is a live action sequence. I couldn't believe it. It was like, oh wow.
The thing is, we make fun of it for having really funny acting, like,
Look, Chris!
But it's important to remember in context, like, FMV videos had been a thing in games for a long time, and they were always
CD.
Yeah, and they were notoriously terrible most of the time. The full motion video, the thing about it, like, we rag on it for being terrible, but when you think of full motion videos for FMVs that were used in games before then, a lot of them were notoriously bad. So because the first game is so, or the opening cutscene is so kind of abstract, where you don't really see much apart from the characters just wandering around, it actually works really well to kind of sell you on the game. It doesn't feel like too terrible. Well, right up until they do the character introductions where they show each of them individually.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
Oh god.
and then it becomes terrible.
Yeah, it looks like an Action Man sequence.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Action Man via TV show from the 90s where at the end Action Man does
Exactly that.
PSAs like, oh yeah, kids don't do drugs. There's so much more worthwhile things to do.
That's the thing, it reminded me, that's exactly what it reminded me of.
Some people use drugs for all sorts of reasons. For instance, sometimes they use them to escape from life. When things get difficult and I need a break, I'd rather climb rocks, climb trees, climb mountains, practice karate, practice tai chi, practice my free throw, skateboard, snowboard, windsurf, play baseball, play football, play piano, draw pictures, write a letter, write a book, right wrongs, watch a movie, watch the news, watch cartoons. Drugs can kill you. When there's all this cool stuff to do, why would I want that? Why would anyone want that?
One thing I wanted to mention with the live action stuff at the beginning, we are actually right now living in a bit of Resident Evil 1 history, recording this in December of 2020, because if you check the credits of Resident Evil, you may notice that all of the cast of voice actors and actors are only credited with their first names. So for years, we never actually knew who voiced or played these characters or played them in the live action videos. So for the last 24 years, fans have been looking for the original voice actors and cast. And most recently, we actually found Jill Valentine. We found Inez as she's credited.
Wait, so we only found out this year that she was voiced.
Yeah, we only found out this year who Jill Valentine, the original actress, was for that role. She was still in school when she filmed it. She was like a teenager.
I read this. I think she was like 16 or something.
Yeah, she was living in Japan. She was in school. So she was super young. And yeah, she was playing like this main character who's supposed to presumably be in her 20s.
So she's 23.
Yeah, well, that would kind of make sense. I don't know how she managed to get into the special SWAT team at 23, but I guess it's possible.
That's so weird.
It doesn't. But yeah, so
Chris is 25, so
yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. They should all be older. I don't know what the age range. I guess like maybe if you start at like 18, you can maybe make it by 23. But
it's all kind of when you go down a rabbit hole of trying to make sense of this world, it's going to be a very long way down, I'm afraid.
Oh no, this is the ultimate series where I do not care less about any of like the kind of serious storytelling or anything, because Resident Evil has never been about that. It has dark elements in it, but for the most part, it is campy fun. You fight a giant plant later in the game.
Yeah, it's not like Silent Hill. Silent Hill's where they're actually trying to tell like a more kind of like good story.
Yeah, well, I think like Resident Evil's story is good. I just don't think it should be taken seriously at all.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. But yeah, Silent Hill has more serious themes. Like it goes into like really dark territory. The closest we ever got to that in Resident Evil 1 was in the remake with Lisa Trevor. So James, you won't know about this because you haven't played the remake, but there's an entire side plot in Resident Evil Remake about Lisa Trevor, who's this weird mutant girl who lives on the outskirts of the mansion.
Oh, because she's like a guardhouse or something.
Yeah, she was experimented on by the scientists back in the 60s. And her father was the one who designed the mansion, which is just a wonderful way to explain why the mansion is so full of weird puzzles and traps is because they got this architect to make it and then like trapped him inside his own trap.
Yeah, because I like Resident Evil 2, but it's a bit weird how like you've got this police station which has all these weird puzzles in it.
Yeah, every police station has its giant Gothic statues, famously, according to Resident Evil 2. But with Resident Evil 1, they actually go out of their way to explain why it's so weird, which is just quite funny. But yeah, so Lisa Trevor, she's this unbeatable, unkillable monster that follows you around in certain parts of the game, and it's just really creepy and weird, and reading about her story is super sad. So that's the closest Resident Evil got to being like super dark, and the idea that this poor girl's like entire family are murdered, and then she's experimented upon, and then she escapes, and she's just this weird deformed monster who's just wandering around the woods. It's great.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, no, so that's a reason in itself to play the remake. Like, as someone who's played all of these games, like, I just enjoy replaying them over and over because there's always stuff to discover.
Yeah, it's like the music in the DualShock edition is why you play the DualShock edition.
Yes, so the DualShock edition is a version of the director's cut with some changes.
Is this the one with the music?
Yeah, so one of the big things with that was that they got a famous composer to redo the music for the DualShock remake. So he was famously deaf at the time. It was like one of his big things was that he was a deaf composer, and it was so amazing that he could do that. Which I guess at the time would have been a weird way of explaining why that like piece of music happened. But then it turned out even more weirdly that deaf composer had been faking it the whole time, and he'd like composed the music for the Tokyo Olympics or something. It was like a big scandal in Japan.
The DualShock version is the one that you can get on like the PS3 store, so it's like that's the only version that's available. Unless you get a PlayStation Classic, but why would you do that?
Oh, it's great. So towards the end of the game, you run into Wesker, who, as we've mentioned, dun dun dun, is an evil bad guy. We know he's evil because he wears sunglasses. And he's running around inside a dark mansion, so I have no idea how he managed that. But it turns out that not only does he work for the evil Umbrella Corporation, but he's actually got his own agenda, because the Umbrella Corporation have told him to destroy this big giant tyrant monster that they've got in the laboratory. So Wesker, he wants to rescue it because he considers it the
ultimate life form.
Which is just hilariously dumb because it's a giant, weird, naked, vein man.
With a claw on his hand.
With a claw and its heart on the outside of its body. So the whole thing is just this dumb-looking monster thing. But Wesker believes in it and he wants to save it. So that's the final boss, which I think is it's kind of the proto Mr. X, right? From Resident Evil 2. Like the idea
that is right.
Find these giant super soldier men, and I guess the tyrant was a failed experiment that Wesker has decided to fall in love with for some reason.
Here's where I get to brag, because you fight Tyrant twice. Fight him once in the lab, and then you fight him again at the very end of the game. So basically, you escape the lab, you get on the helipad just as the lab's about to explode, and then Tyrant, I think it's an upgraded super version of Tyrant, jumps out through the bottom of the floor, and you have to run around, fight him until Brad in the helicopter throws you the rocket launcher. Here's where I get to brag. He'd hit me twice. I pick up the rocket launcher, I aim it at him, and I fire it literally just as he's about to hit me. So I think I was just about to die, but then I felt like such a badass when that happened.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. No, there's so many moments like that throughout the game where you just feel so awesome. I think that's one of the reasons why I love it so much, is because you actually feel like, action hero. Like, other games don't really capture it as well as Resident Evil does.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with all Resident Evil games is at first you are intimidated by the zombies and you're like, let's run away. And then by the end of the game, you're just mowing them down and you feel like because it starts like, it's always when you're escaping its secret lab that's about to explode. and there's like zombies, and you're just like, whatever, die, and it's just like so awesome.
You go from being Ashley in The Evil Dead to Ash Williams in Evil Dead 2. And you run around with a chainsaw and a shotgun. Well, you don't get a chainsaw, sadly.
I'm so editing in the scene from that film. I know exactly what I'm editing. That's my favourite bit of Evil Dead 2.
Did you know this game was ported to the DS?
No.
Yeah, there's a port on the DS called Resident Evil Deadly Silence. I think it changed a few things around. Like, it's pretty much the same game as the PS1 game. I think they've added in like some kind of like touchscreen mini games. I think the game takes place on the touchscreen, and then like the maps on the top screen. And there's also an attempt to port this game to the Game Boy Color that was never finished. But if you look at if you can find the prototype on YouTube, it is so ambitious. Like they've tried to take this game and put it on the Game Boy Color, and I think they did an okay job at it.
Thing I want to mention was that Shinji Mikami, who is one of the lead designers of the game, one of the things that he wanted to do with Resident Evil was he wanted to kind of fix horror movies, because he would watch a lot of horror movies, including the Lucio Fulci film Zombie. He'd be really irritated because characters would always do really stupid things. So that's the thing we always have in horror movies when we're watching, like, why are you doing that? Why are you like screwing up in this way? And now you've got yourself killed. Well done.
Oh, it reminds you of one of the worst horror films I've ever seen. It's called The Chernobyl Diaries.
Oh my
I don't
God,
remember
I love
why.
that film.
But I'm surprised someone else knows about it. Like,
it's garbage.
I
love it.
Yeah, I remember seeing it on a date or something when I was like 18, and there's like, I think it was like the girl I was seeing suggested it or something, and I was like, okay, I'm not really much for horror films. And it's like a found footage film, and all these people are on holiday in Russia, like, oh, this guy can give us a tour of Chernobyl. It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you go into Chernobyl? You're basically asking for weird vampire people in the cellar to come and eat you.
Also, why would you agree to go and see?
So, I know I said we're going to Moscow.
Yeah.
You guys ever heard of Chernobyl?
Yeah. That's where the nuclear disaster happened.
Yes. Have you heard of extreme tourism?
You're incredible.
Who's coming with Paul to Chernobyl?
Chernobyl.
The thing is, with Mikami, was that he basically saw a video game as the perfect way to fix this problem, which is that if the player has control of the horror movie protagonist, then they only have themselves to blame when they do something stupid and they get themselves killed. So I just really liked that as a design philosophy, is to rebuke horror movies and explain this is what you should do when you come across a zombie. The first thing you do is run away, unlike the women in Lucio Fulci's Zombie, who just stand there screaming and then get eaten.
Everyone always says, I think with this whole situation going on now, it was like, oh yeah, zombie apocalypse, we're going to be so bad. And everyone's like, no, you're not, because video games are not real life.
Also, it's worth noting that it was subject to films and stuff like, and horror films that inspired Resident Evil. Resident Evil had its own film franchise, would you believe?
Yes.
And
yes, and I have not seen any of them.
Neither have I. So
I've seen a bunch of them, and they're all wonderful.
Wait, have you watched them, Ewan?
Yeah, I love those films.
Oh
They are the worst things ever if you are a fan of Resident Evil. They get the tone completely wrong. They are action movies. They have almost no horror in them apart from really terrible looking CGI monsters.
And they add in this character called Alice, who's basically the director's wife, who's like this like super badass warrior who can like take on like millions of zombies.
Yeah, it's hilarious how ridiculous it gets, but that's what I kind of love about it, is that it just has this really dumb charm, which doesn't match the dumb charm of the original Resident Evil, but it does a good job. It tries. So I enjoy that. Plus, they actually did get some people to play Jill Valentine and characters like that occasionally, which is kind of cool.
They got what's his name, Captain Cold from the Flash TV show to play Chris Redfield.
Yeah, so stuff like that's neat. It's neat to see them in films.
A deadly virus capable of contaminating the entire world has been released.
Oh my god.
Intelligence. The corporation's keeping a few secrets down here.
But they have only 3 hours left before it begins infecting and mutating the whole human race.
Okay, you know what? There's a giant shark in this game.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to talk about the giant shark, because we are not giving this game credit for the giant monsters that run around the mansion.
We've already spoken about the snake, but there's also the giant shark.
Yeah, so in the funniest moment of all of Resident Evil, when you're playing as Chris, you go into this room, which you quickly realize is a giant shark tank of some kind. And your buddy Richard is there, and you go, and again, Richard is a guy from the Bravo team. You go, oh man, Richard, it's so good to see you. And then a giant shark just jumps out and eats Richard right in front of you.
Well, that's only in remake though, because I think in the original, or at least only when you play as Jill, he's being bitten by Yawn the snake, and she has to get some serum for him. No matter how quick you are, he always dies.
Yeah, so the remake fixed that in that you are actually able to run over and save him by getting an antidote. Oh, one thing we should point out, Richard has his own amazing voice acting moments.
Demons everywhere or something like that, isn't it?
This house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
And then, of course, you then have to deal with this giant shark. And in both the original and in the remake, it is terrifying as this giant shark just swims towards you.
And then when you take the water out the tank, he's on dry land, this shark's just flopping about, and it's so funny.
Really, it's really scary though, because they managed to place the shark right next to the exit. So it's flopping around, and every time I run past it, I'm like, is it gonna try and jump at me right now? It's little design details like that make this game really clever and creepy, because it throws you off guard. There's an entire thing with a giant plant as well, where you can cook up a formula that destroys its roots.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. There's so much in this game. James, get on this game. Play all of it.
Alright. But
and then play 2.
I will, I promise. I'll make it 2 resolutions for 2021. I'll make it, I need to complete Resident Evil 1 and 2. But also, there is one bit that stuck out to me, is when you go into a room, you unlock it with a key, and it looks like kind of like a shower room, but it's got these little armoured, basically night armour surrounding it. And there's basically these little kind of sewers in the middle, and the 2 statues you can push on it. And I remember thinking to myself, I've seen enough Indiana Jones movies to know where this is going. I'm just going to push these statues here so that no sprays or gas or whatever is going to come out and melt my face or whatever. I'm just this is definitely inspired, What actually happens? I don't actually know what happens.
Gas comes out if you step on the thing at the wrong.
I was right.
No, that's the really cool thing. A lot of the traps, we should congratulate you earlier, James, for figuring out the ceiling trap with the shotgun.
That was so stupid.
But it was smart though, because you actually did it the way you're supposed to deal with it. Because you take the thing off the thing and you go back, you go through the door, and the ceiling starts coming towards you. So you go back, you put the shotgun on it, and it fixes the problem. So so that's technically how you're supposed to be doing it. It's only because Jill gets rescued by Barry that the problem's solved.
But I missed the Jill sandwich part, so I was messaging you guys about it, and I think you guys at one point said, "Are you dead?" And I was like, "No." I just literally ran back and put it back, and you were like, "Oh." That was.
I was like, yeah. I didn't want to give away the Jill sandwich thing, but I was like,
I know, I got disappointed.
There's a bunch of little cutscenes with Barry that you can very easily miss throughout the game.
There's a point where I thought, because you fight the snake twice, I killed the snake, and then I had to go through the mansion basement, and then I came back through the basement, and I got killed by 2 hunters as soon as I left the basement. And then I played that bit again, killed Yawn, and then Barry comes back with a rope, and I skipped the whole basement bit.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you can actually you can skip over that entire bit because there's nothing in there that you need to get. You can just use a passcode. But Chris does not have Barry when you go down that hole, so you actually do need to go through that basement no matter what you do. And in the director's cut, they put 3 hunters in the very first room of the basement for you to deal with. So they know what they're doing in terms of making it difficult and changing the way that the game is played. And it's very cool.
There's an interesting thing about the director's cut. I think the director's cut, part of the reason they released that was because they did an original version of Resident Evil 2, but it got scrapped. So they released they released the director's cut with a demo of Resident Evil 2 to like whet people's appetites.
Should we talk about our favourite moments?
I'm going to say Jill sandwich because that is hilarious. But if for a serious answer, I'm going to say the reveal of the hunters, because it's just the way you're just like, okay, I'm going back to the mansion. I can deal with this. I'm just going to go through those last few doors, get what I need, and then I can escape the mansion. Then as soon as you get back into the mansion, you see this cutscene of so the first person perspective running through where you've just been. Then you see a green hand reaching towards the door that you've just come in through.
They're very scary as well. I watched a video of of a hunter thing where they'd managed to kill it in a way where its face is right in front of the camera. And this was in the remake, so it's got like all of the beautiful HD detail. And it's just the most scary, creepy looking face, because it's like a weird reptilian monster. It's great.
Yeah, because in the original PS1 game, you can't really tell what they are.
Yeah, they're just these weird, like, lizard people. They're very weird looking and creepy. I think my favourite bit, I mean, all of it is great. I love certain moments, like when you're running through the corridor and the dogs attack. One thing that's hilarious in the remake is that when you first run through that same corridor where the dogs jump through the window, first time you run through the corridor, you hear a crack of the window, but the dogs don't actually jump through the first time. I love little details like that where they're clearly trolling the players of the original game, where they're like expecting the dogs to attack and then they don't. But yeah, there's so many moments. I think for me, my favourite moment is probably the completely garbled dialogue with Wesker at the very end. It's the fact, again, I can't do it verbatim, we'll just get a little clip of it as he's talking, but like, oh my god, it's just the dumbest dialogue I've ever heard.
All this power will be mine.
For the sake of an awful creature?
Don't be upset. All weak people exist to be eaten.
It's just a mess, and it always sticks out in my brain. But that and the credits music is also wonderful. But it's hard. Like there's so many moments that are stuck in my mind. Like, one thing we didn't even mention is the fact that one thing that caused a heart attack the first time it happened to me in the remake. Zombies can knock down doors and follow you, which is just a whole other detail of the game. So if you don't kill zombies at certain points, like zombies that are next to doors, if you're running through by the adjacent door, they will barge through and attack you that way. So there's moments like that. I had a heart attack during the director's cut when a zombie actually did follow me through a door because they'd actually scripted one to do that. It's not in the basement, it's a completely different one, but yeah, it's wonderful. And James, I know you've had a very limited experience, but what was your favourite moment?
Guess. Seriously, it's like, I mean, we've already talked about it. It's the snake. Like, come on, like, literally, I could not believe that when it happened. Like, literally, my brain switched off when it happened. I was like, what is this? What is this?
What is this place?
Literally, and when I finished, to be fair also, when I actually finally did defeat the snake, I literally was over the moon. It took me like 5 times to beat it. And I was just like, I finally beat it! And I literally had to run back to... Oh wait, no, I didn't run back, sorry. I had an antidote handy. So I got the antidote and I survived. And then I went on to kill some crows. It was a good time. You know.
Oh, yeah. So funny enough, if you don't have the antidote, Barry just comes along and takes you and gives you the antidote anyway.
What? Why am I finding all this now?
I just love the fact that one thing I really love with Chris's playthrough, you have to play as Rebecca a couple of times. First to get the antidote for Chris if he gets poisoned, but also with the plants as well. Later on, she runs over and has to do she has to make the formula to rescue Chris, and you have to go down into the basement and kill the plant's roots that way. There's so many little details that you can completely miss because the game is designed in a way where there's multiple endings.
Yeah, it's like I found out the hard way that Barry dies. In one playthrough, I was like, no, I'll go off my own. I'll leave Barry. You stay here, and then Barry ends up dying. But then I reloaded, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have Barry come with me.
It's very upsetting. Yeah, we all love Barry. He's a lovable schlub. But yeah, no, Rebecca as well. You need to rescue from a hunter at one point, or a couple of points actually. And if you don't, then she dies, and that can completely change the ending of the game. Like the one time when I was being really evil and played as Jill, and I let both Chris and Barry die. It turns out if you do that, you don't even need to fight the tyrant the second time round. You just get on the helicopter and leave. You don't even blow up the mansion. You can literally just walk out. And there's a little detail that, like, at the end that the tyrants escaped and, like, you've literally caused everything to go wrong.
Oh, it's like the Oddworld games where if you don't save enough Madokans, you have a cutscene where Abe dies because they're all like, you.
It's so unfair and unforgiving now, but we'll talk about it in another episode. I love Oddworld so much.
Yeah, of course. That's one of the things me and James bonded over.
Yeah, when you mentioned Oddworld, I was like, hold on, what? Yeah, carry on.
There's basically, I think both me and you liked Oddworld.
Yeah.
So then you was like, Rob, do you like Oddworld? I was like, I love Oddworld. And suddenly James was like, oh my god, Oddworld.
I think it was the moment when I said, like, I'll take a photo of this, but basically I have the Oddworld art collection, the Abe's Origins collection book. And then you said you had that too, and I was like, what?
Yeah. And I had the CD as well.
Yeah. You got the expansive version of it, and I just got the book. You got the whole shebang. Wow.
So yeah, we are on social media. So if you're not already, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Bloobcast Pod, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we are also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. It really helps us out. And another thing, we have an email address, which is bloobcast@outlook.com. Please email us any feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episodes. You never know, we might decide to give you a shout out.
And also, give us an idea of what you might want us to talk about as well. Give us any suggestions.
Yeah. Not the Teletubbies. We will never do Teletubbies.
No, don't suggest Teletubbies, please.
Please suggest all of the other Resident Evil games, because I'll happily play them all.
And I'll promise by next year I'll play Resident Evil 1 and 2 as well.
And also need to finish watching Reboot.
Yes, I'll do that as well, Rob, I promise.
Okay, so James, do you want to reveal what the next episode will be, which will actually, I think, will be the first episode of 2021?
Yes, so we're going to be talking about the Alien film franchise, not the new ones, but the original.
The original four.
The original four, yeah. So
the original quadrilogy.
So it'd be Alien 1, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. All films I love. I'm not sure about the others, so I think you've all got...
Yeah, I think particularly Resurrection, there's going to be some conflicting opinions, and I think Ewan's got some opinions on aliens, which will be interesting to hear.
Yeah, no, I have the weirdest opinions about
Ewan and I have also studied it quite closely. We've read books on it and written essays, so it's going to be a very good discussion.
I'm looking forward to it, yeah.
So until next time, we are Bloobcast. Thank you for listening in.
And also, because this is probably the last episode of 2020, we want to say this is obviously this year's been completely mad, but we hope you all stay safe, have a wonderful holiday as much as you can, and we will see you next year.
Happy New
Happy New Year!
Hey, that was all right. Yeah, okay. That works. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and stay tuned for the next one in 2021.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
That's what I was going to say.
But just take a look at this. It's
Bloobcast.
Oh my God.